Hello and welcome to another episode of the 11th OVC examining primary resources. It's been a while, but we're glad to be back at it again. And today we're going to be talking about pontoon bridges. Some of you may be familiar with them. That one of the most notable examples is probably when the Union Army constructed a pontoon bridge crossing the Rappahannock River at Fredericksburg in Virginia. And I was fortunate enough at the 150th Fredericksburg to participate in the reenactment there, and we actually got across the Rappahannock in the same spot and float across the river in pontoon boats and clear a bridgehead for, in theory, the pontoon bridge to be constructed there. So that was a lot of fun. But we're going to be looking at some original photographs involving some pontoon bridges. And so there's a couple things that we want to share with you here today. And we're going to look at all the different aspects of a pontoon bridge. So we're going to start off by the idea that pontoon bridges are a temporary bridge in order to cross some sort of water obstacle. It could be a very narrow creek, it could be a large river, or it might even be leading to a boat if you're loading and unloading supplies and so forth. So in order to get your bridge constructed, you have to transport the parts and pieces, and the best way to do that is in wagons. And so in the case of the Union Army, they are going to be using lots and lots of wagons. There's several types of wagons. One of them is the Pontoon Wagon, and you can see that here. This is a wonderful photograph that we found, and there are two pontoon wagons with the actual pontoon boats still sitting on top of them. They're very heavy-duty wagons there. And they would be drawn by 6 horses. There would be just a few implements and various ropes and so forth attached to the back axle. But then there was another wagon that would be in this wagon train, and it was called the Chess Wagon. And that was actually a wagon that, there's a nice photograph of it here, or a little sketch. The Chess Wagon right here is what you would use to transport the boards that you would use to lash the actual pontoon boats together. So those were the only things that could be on those wagons. It's not like you can save some extra effort and throw in your knapsack in the back of a wagon there. These wagons were specifically for moving the pontoons and the implements that are required to lash them together. So it was that's all that was used for. There would be an engineer detachment specifically trained on how to assemble and assemble and deconstruct those bridges as it was needed, and ensure that they were in good condition. They required constant maintenance. And by the way, this is a really great website that I learned about. I just Googled it, and it's all about Civil War pontoon bridges, and it was written by Robert Niepert. And there's lots of really good details here, so I suggest you visit. We'll try to put the link at the in the notes below the video here. But back to our images here. So these are pretty good sized boats. There were various types of pontoons that were utilized during the Civil War. A lot of them were wooden boats, but they also used canvas boats that were lashed together as well. There's also some evidence of India rubber floats, and then the boards would be put across them. From what I've seen, I actually got to go to a museum in Arkansas and during the Red River campaign, and there was a inflatable bridge made out of India rubber that was utilized there. And I think, if I remember correctly, there was a really cool exhibit, and it had some sort of gasket where they had tried to pump air into it. And anyway, it was pretty cool. So I just remembered that when I was looking up all this fun stuff. So okay, we've got the boats and all the implements to the area where an appropriate crossing has been determined to be located. And so then you can start the process of constructing your bridge. Ideally, you're not going to be under fire, but at Fredericksburg they obviously were. And that's going to definitely hinder your progress, especially when you have really highly organized engineer teams and they each know their part. And if you lose guys in those, it makes it very difficult, obviously, to do your job. But what's really cool is they have specific pieces that they know how to assemble. That's their only job. And so there's lots of different parts of a pontoon bridge. The first thing that we're going to talk about is an abutment. And that's basically where the bridge is going to be based off of on one bank of a body of water. And so if you look in this photograph here, I believe this is outside of Petersburg in Virginia in '65. This is a really cool photograph. You can see those pontoons all lashed leading over to the city there. There's two bridges actually. Always like looking at these crusty looking NCOs over here. All just hanging out there. This guy's smoking a nice pipe. But the thing I want you to notice in this photograph is that you'll see the dirt has been built up here. Abutments could be really one of the most challenging aspects of constructing a pontoon bridge, because you have to raise up the bank or actually excavate it and dig it down so that it's a lot easier to get down to the river and to where your bridge would be laid out. And so you would have a team specifically tasked with building up or, easing that abutment down to the river so you could actually attach the bridge off of that location and have an easy transition from shore to the water and back again. The next thing that's going to happen, they're going to start moving boats out off of those wagons, and you'll have teams move the boats down to the river. They would be sent upstream, and then they would be brought in alongside the abutment as it was constructed there. And the boats were actually placed ideally about 20 feet apart, and then the next set of engineer teams would be moving into play here because they're going to utilize what is called balks. And this is a nice side view. This is Bull Run, and there's a little smaller pontoon bridge here. But the balks are actually timbers that are 27 feet long, is what the website said I was reading. And they actually are going to go lengthwise across the river here. That's what connects each pontoon boat to the next one. And they're overlapped, and they're actually lashed together. And so that's going to be it's going to hold the boats together, but it's also going to provide the first bit of structure to your pontoon bridge. The next thing that's going to happen is you're going to have the lashing crew come in. After those balks are put in place, they're going to lash them and make sure they are secured. Then you're going to have the chesses. And chesses are basically the boards that are going to go at a 90-degree angle across those balk boards, and that's going to provide the surface that you're going to use to walk across, or in the case of artillery or wagons, you're going to roll across that pontoon bridge. And then the last team that's going to be put into play is you're going to have the side rail team. And you can still see here, the side rails are basically put in on top of everything just to add some extra rigidity, some structure, and make sure it all stays together. So that is essentially all of the pieces of a pontoon bridge. The other thing that I wanted to note is that your bridge is in a body of water. Most likely it's going to have some sort of a current with it. And so when those boats are moved into position, they actually are going to have cables and anchors with each boat. And they would be stored inside the boat when they're being transported on that wagon. And so this is a good photograph here. You can see there's anchor cables coming off of a couple of these. There's a nice anchor that's not being used. You can see that right here. That's pretty cool. But these cables are going to be out, and they're ideally going to prevent this bridge from being shifted in the current. Now, if there's going to be a very strong current, you're going to see a lot more anchor cables and anchors being utilized. More of them are going to be upstream, so that kind of holds them in place, and then every other boat ideally is going to be held in place on the downstream side as well. Now, once this bridge is fully constructed, you're going to have engineer crews constantly inspecting them, because there's always going to be that current, and through use, things are going to shift and some things might loosen up. So they're always going to be making sure all the lashings are tight, all the boards are secure, and nothing is drifting out of place. And so the other really interesting thing is when large armies are moving back and forth across these pontoon bridges, the engineers are basically going to call out route step for everyone. That's one of the things I learned on that link as I was reading a little bit more. Because if everyone is marching in step, the whole thing is going to be thrown out of whack, and there's bad things will happen. But as long as everyone's at the route step and just kind of taking it easy, you should have no problem at all. Now the nice thing is, once you are done using a pontoon bridge, you can disassemble it, load it all back up in the wagons, and then you can transport it to wherever you need to next. So that was a really nice thing. So it's a nice temporary bridge. Now there's another photograph I wanted to share with you here. This is of the pontoon bridges. You can see all these different anchor cables and all the different elements that we've talked about so far. But they're in the process, I think it's of disassembling this bridge, is in my opinion. But there's no real rush. I mean, obviously you can't really see that, but there's a section of it is what's interesting. Instead of one boat at a time, they've lashed several of them together and are moving this in segments, probably because it is a very long pontoon bridge there. But that's a really neat photo. But the other one I wanted to share is this one. There's so much to see in this one. I really enjoy looking at it. But as you can see, this pontoon bridge is actually not crossing the entire river. This is actually leading over to some various boats that are in the process of loading and unloading all of their supplies and troops and so forth. And over here you can actually see there looks like a platoon of infantrymen all forming up. Hopefully they're not going to be marching in step, but you can see there's anchors here, anchor cables, and it looks like every other boat is going to have those anchor cables. This might be the upstream portion, and the current's going this way. But you have lots of guys over here. They're in those boats. Looks like that's probably the engineer detachment, or at least some guys tasked to that bridge and just making sure everything's secure. There's some wagons, and this is the 4th New York Cavalry, I believe, as evidenced by that. Looks like they're moving some grain around. This is a neat little section. There's a guy with a guide on, just kind of chilling on top of the grain sacks there. I don't normally see that in some of the photos as I'm looking through here. And then this is really cool. Check this out. All of these hand tools, all these implements, picks and shovels and axes, like that is a lot of implements there. So you don't normally see that. And then of course all the large crates there. Let's see, what else do we have to share over here? There's one of the individual pontoon boats. Looks like it's a little smaller one. They could use that for running supplies. Let's see, you got some guys washing his hands or getting a drink down there. That's a pretty cool photograph overall. Yeah, pontoons were a very innovative way to transport troops across those bodies of water, supplies, get to where you needed, and you can easily disassemble it and reuse it even better there. So we hope you've enjoyed this episode of the 11th Ohio Volunteer Cavalry in examining those primary resources, in this case all those amazing photographs of pontoon bridges. If you'd like to learn more, look us up on Facebook, give us a like, go ahead and subscribe to us on YouTube, and we'll do our best to get some more videos and really good content for you to enjoy as well. Until we see you in the field next time, read hard.